to the Green Dream video series. I'm Natalie Kenway, Global Head of ESG Insights at ESG Clarity. For today's episode, I'm speaking to Julia Dreblow, SRI Services Director and founder of the Fund EcoMarket Tool. Julia has been a responsible and ethical investment specialist since the 1990s. She is extremely well known and respected across the industry and has brought her wealth of experience to answer our questions today. Thank you so much for joining me, Julia.
Thank you, Natalie. Absolute pleasure.
As you know, the interest in our area of the market has completely exploded, particularly over the past year or maybe 2 to 3 years. So during that explosion of interest, what has caught you by surprise?
Natalie, I think that's a great question, I must say, first of all, because there are so many different things that have surprised me over time. But I think probably the main area that has surprised me is the fact that it's exploded so fast, and we're capturing, if you like, lots of ground in ESG, but yet real change hasn't yet started to happen. So it's the next big challenge for us is to say, okay, we've got all these assets under management now, and there's loads of people talking about great stock selection strategies and great engagement. Let's really make it have teeth, make it really work. So it's the lack of getting to that next stage yet, which I think is the thing that most surprises me. And in part, it's because of the newness of so many people to this sector. But, a bit more passion, a bit more clout, I think is what I want to see next.
Yes, we were chatting just before, weren't we, about this, and that we've barely scratched the surface. So there is so much more to do. And we are both talking about the sort of more action that needs to be taken.
Yes, absolutely. There's so much more to do. If we are going to make humankind's existence sustainable, investment has got to go very, very strongly in that direction. And we've got to reshape the world. So we've got this massive investment opportunity, and we've got to start driving change now, else it will be too late. So much to change, so many opportunities, but so little time. So now everybody's on board. Fantastic. Welcome to the club. The penny's dropped. But guess what? You're really going to have to get your hands dirty now and roll your sleeves up, get stuck in.
Yeah, that's completely right. And speaking about investment opportunities, you obviously look quite closely at funds on the Fund EcoMarket site. So have you noticed any themes in terms of new products coming to the market?
Yeah, obviously there's been expansion across the whole market, but the real main area of growth, which is both good and bad, is the kind of middle ground where the funds that we classify as being ESG plus and sustainability tilted. So you've got, we classify funds according to SRI styles, have done for 11 years now. You've got those funds which are very clearly themed, and they're very clearly about investing in sustainable solutions or environmental solutions or social issues, solving problems, those that are very, very clearly utterly bought into the subject. But you've got this middle ground, which I want to see a lot more of, but they're funds where it's a lot more nuanced, and it's a lot more about, no, we're trying to stick fairly close to a regular index. We don't want to take massive bets. The tracking error has got to be fairly low. I think given the size of change that we need those kinds of funds to be more bold now. I only invented or created both those classifications on our site a few years ago. We've now got pushing 70 funds in that market, and that's as many funds as there were ethical funds if you go back just 15 years. That's kind of the size of the market was. So we see massive growth there, and it caters for regular advisors' needs, regular clients' needs, which is great, but they're going to have to go further or prove that their engagement is working, which I want it to, because we need that middle ground to move as well.
Absolutely. And I was reading through some of the articles and blogs that you've written, and you talk about some of the major risks within the ESG investment universe. Can you outline some of these for ESG Clarity readers? What do we need to be mindful of?
I think the name of your publication plays to some of it, which is that we need people to really understand what they're doing and where they're investing. We need a lot more transparency. Well, I know we'll talk about it later, but regulation has got to really push funds and intermediaries and everyone to look seriously at these things, because they really matter, because climate change, biodiversity loss, etc., are genuinely risks to humankind. We will drop off the edge of a cliff if if we continue to squander the Earth's resources and not make good the mess that we're causing, and not look after CO2 emissions. So massive investment risks, obviously, which are ahead of risks to the whole of society. And I think part of the way to get through that is to make sure the data and the transparency and the information is all there. And that's a lot of what we're about on our site, on Fund EcoMarket, is about bringing fund management information together so that people can use it as a resource to understand what's on offer. And then if those things aren't good enough, of course, then you focus on the transparency and say, okay, someone's seen they don't like this, well, go talk to the fund manager, encourage them to do something different. And fund managers will respond because they're trying to attract investment. That's their businesses. So the transparency bit is absolutely crucial.
Yes, completely. So you've spent a lot of time working with the UK regulator recently, the FCA, and many have said that the regulator is simply catching up with the pace of demand for responsible investment products. What do you think are the key areas of focus for regulation going forward, or what should they be?
So there's a few different angles to this, I would say. So the principles that the FCA have recently published in this area are really important because they will help people to understand, if you like, from the way a product is named through their objectives and strategy and the data sources they use and everything, will help you to understand it. So that firms up the foundations. Where we need to get to ultimately is internationally, we need to have all investors significantly more focused on the big ticket issues. There's of course lots of issues that loads of people care about and they matter. But things like biodiversity loss and climate change, we cannot, no one can ignore those things. So we've got to internationally, as a UK regulator, working with other regulators, and the FCA is doing this with IOSCO, working on having standards for all listed entities, right the way through to cradle to grave, if you like, right the way through to what the end investor buys as an individual fund when they're putting £10,000 in an ISA or whatever they're doing. So right the way through, we've got to get a proper understanding and transparency, and they can be done with standards, or some of it could be just done, frankly, with regulation, to say, okay, stuff that is trashing the planet is no longer allowed, so that has to be changed. So we've got to have a massive sea change in the way that all regulation works, but focusing on the financial side, it starts with listing requirements and it goes right the way through to the end consumer products. What are they buying? Do they know what they're getting and exactly what they can expect? Oh, and labels are part of that. Sorry, just to jump in, I know the FCA is working on labels and that kind of area at the moment, which is what we've been talking about more recently. So sorry, so I will get in the way of that. I agree with that. People, labels help. It just gets people in more easily. Our labels have been really popular for a long time now, and just helping people to get their heads around what's available. Sorry for interrupting you there, Natalie.
No worries at all. But it sounds like an enormous task, but I think once we get there, we will see this enormous shift as well that will follow. So it'll be definitely worthwhile. So last year we saw funds with higher ESG credentials outperform those with lower ESG credentials, particularly around the April crashes COVID-19 unleashed on the world. So this year there's been a bit more of a rebalancing. So what are your predictions for the future? I would like to say that sustainable business models will be the one that outperform over the long term. Is that something that you stand by?
100%. So that one of my grandparents used to, I think it's my grandfather used to say, in the end we're all dead, which is true. So, full length of time, we know what's going to happen. We've absolutely got to address climate change and biodiversity risk, and also we've got to look after people. So we need that whole just transition. So we need to stop oil companies pulling oil out the ground, etc. So we absolutely know where we're going to get to in the end. In between times, there will be peaks and troughs. I feel quite sure there'll be all sorts of reasons why different companies do well. But long term, we've got to get to a place where humankind is existing on our planet sustainably. Else we're all in big trouble. There will be no future for our kids, grandchildren, whatever. So we know where we've got to get to. So that can only mean outperformance those funds that have got more sustainable and better strategies. Some of those companies will make mistakes in the way. They're not all going to be overnight successes. It's always really dangerous to generalize, but long term, absolutely 100% more sustainable companies stand a far better chance of prospering than companies that aren't, because those that don't will have to fall by the wayside at some point in time, hopefully quite swiftly.
Yeah, I think it makes sure that you're able to compete in the future. And we also have COP26 coming up this year. What are your expectations?
Well, one of the things I really like about COP26 this year is the increased focus on finance and the financial side. So what I really hope for is that we get commitments that really have teeth with investors across the world saying, yes, we are going to direct more money towards green finance, but not only that, but alongside that to do a lot more stewardship activity, because we need the transition to take place with existing companies. So we need to get the focus on financial services, where the money is going, and really in order to make 1.5 degrees achievable, which is ultimately the goal of COP26, we've got to get people investing in new technologies where the innovators need support, and we also need to see pressure being put on existing companies to make sure they make the necessary transitions to guarantee their own future successes.
Fantastic. And we always end the Green Dream with this question. So what is your favourite sustainable drink or snack?
I love this question, it's great. So for me, absolutely, it's got to be Cafe Direct coffee. So firstly, I like my coffee. Also, it is just really, really nice coffee. It's really good coffee. I go for the full strength, number 5, full flavoured, but also it brings back happy memories for me. So prior to working for myself, I worked for a company called Friends Provident. I was their SRI marketing manager, so in charge of what they did on that side for a long while. And they asked, so when Cafe Direct was launched, when they IPO'd, I think it was early 2000s, Triodos, who were running their PR campaign for them, so Triodos Bank, fab company, were running their, or helping them with their promotion to raise capital in order to get them to IPO, which they did. And I was quoted in their IPO, and it was just quoted in their media stuff. And it just always reminds me that these wonderful fair trade organisations can exist and prosper and last and go from strength to strength. And there's nothing more important really than a good cup of coffee either. So I'd have to say, yeah, Cafe Direct, definitely.
What a lovely story. Thank you very much for sharing that with us, and thank you for all your insights today.